The Reformed Gamers is brought to you 100% independent and ad-free thanks to our dear patrons over on patreon.com/thereformedgamers. To get yourself sweet perks such as early access to all of our episodes, special episodes of the podcast, and more, head over to patreon.com/thereformedgamers today and consider lending support to the show. Without further ado, let's hop into the show. Hello and welcome, dear listeners, to episode 140 of The Reformed Gamers, the show all about theology, video games, and anything else that we can think of. I'm your host, Logan.
And I'm his co-host, Adam.
And dear listeners, in case you didn't already look at the show notes or anything and any of that stuff, we got a special guest for this episode here. Coming out of Houston's First Baptist Church middle school, doing middle school ministry over there, all sorts of fun stuff, all sorts of craziness in the Fortnites and all that, is Tony Bianco, man. Say hello to the dear listeners.
Yeah, how's it going, dear listeners? Glad to be here. Logan, Adam, thank you again for having me.
No. Oh, man, you're welcome. Thanks for joining us on the show here. Now, just as a little bit of a briefer, we all know each other quite well. We used to work together, went to seminary together. So, I mean, if you...
We go back, man. We go back.
We do.
Logan was in my wedding. Did you know that, Adam?
Oh, yeah.
I knew there was some connection there, like from
Logan
being
was
back
an
home.
usher in my wedding. And
Crazy.
So,
Dude,
just saying.
do you still have those pictures
way
where
back.
I tried to
Of
straighten
course
my
I
hair?
do.
It looks so
I-
bad.
Jeez,
I
we need these
sure
posted. We need
do.
we got to share these.
Oh,
I may have to find them and send them to Adam and let him
There we
go.
be the keeper of the
Yeah. Do that.
Dangerous power.
My wife likes to share those with all of our students here. Whenever that topic comes up, my wife will find ways to bring it up, and then she's like, "Oh yeah, here's a picture," and I'm like, "Stop sharing that with people." But she, that's what she does because my wife keeps me on my toes. She just keeps me.
We were neighbors. We were gaming buddies. We played COD together. We sold
Played football
apples
together.
Oh man,
all the
some good
things.
stuff.
So much
Went
fun.
to some Frozen, like at the
Ice
Gaylord. What was that thing?
Christmas,
Yeah, it was like
yeah.
ice sculptures and craziness.
It was absolutely
A lot of
wild.
good memories.
So crazy. I gave you a stocking cap that you probably still even have.
I do. I took that boy to Central Asia. That
Yeah, you
thing
did.
was nice.
Yeah, man.
Oh man.
Memories.
All this to say is we know each other before even tonight, so this is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. Dear listeners, if you subscribe to us on Patreon, just go listen to the pre-show and listen to the hijinks that ensued. I do want to say one thing real quick because we have a new setup here going on. We've got all these sound effect stuff, so I might press a button or two every now and then, especially when we need to get in some story time and bring it in close, sharing life updates and all that jazz. Anyway, but let's go ahead and start getting into the show here. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping real quick. Just want to let you dear listeners know we did reboot Fury on our TRG YouTube. The first episode is up there. I tried to get episode 2 up, but this past week with Easter and everything has just been crazy. I've had literally no time to do anything. So that's going to go up the week that this episode releases. So you guys should look out for that on Wednesday. Going to try and get a couple more videos up because Cuphead and what's that? Katana Zero. Yeah, Katana Zero came out. I'm going to try and get some of that stuff up. So TRG YouTube, go over there, hit the follow button, hit the bell icon so you get notified when we put a new episode up. This should go without saying, but I feel like this is a good disclaimer to say anyway. This is also the week that Avengers Endgame comes out. Don't go spoiling the movie. Don't be one of those people.
I'm so excited about this, guys.
Me too. I'm so hyped, man. I already got my tickets. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. My man, Ant-Man, is going to save the day. Anyway, without further ado, let's just jump into the show here with a little bit of what have we been playing. And as usual, the guest gets to go first. So, Tony, man, what have you been playing?
Man. So I just want to preface this that I am a middle school student minister at my church, and I'm also a father. And so, unlike some of you dear listeners, you may be playing some of the newest games, some of the kind of indie, more obscure games on a regular basis. However, I'm still playing Fortnite and Apex Legends because that is what my students are playing. And I'm going to be honest, I really enjoy both of those games. The Battle Royale format is fantastic. And then I've even going a little bit old school and bringing my son into some new school for him. We've been playing Minecraft together,
Oh, there
which
you
has
go.
been a whole lot of fun. getting to play. My son just turned 7, and so we are allowing him to play some video games. We on the old NES a little bit, but also with Dad, he's able to play Minecraft, and he's loving it.
That's awesome, man.
Nice.
It's always a good game.
Yeah.
That was one that me and my wife got into after we first got married, and we just like spent hours and hours playing it, and it's a good one. It's a good one for that co-op
It's a classic. It's a classic.
show. Adam, man, what you been into?
Yes, sir. It's been a crazy couple weeks. I've been trying to, tighten up, clean up some things, but still playing some Division, just dabbling in that, trying to find gaps where I can. Actually, I've got into Borderlands 2 VR recently.
Ooh,
and
tell me about that.
the more I play it, the more I enjoy it. At first, when I got it, I'm like, am I gonna want to play a whole game in this? And then I showed a couple people that are into Borderlands, and I've got the aim controller, which is nice for first-person shooters in VR. And so the more I showed people and the more I've got into it, I'm like, man, it's really good. It runs well. The aiming, I've got some better guns, and I'm just better with the controls. And apparently, I've got my VR sea legs. I can play first-person game with jumping and all that for a good hour, an hour and a half, and not get sick. So.
How much room do you need to have for this game specifically? But have you played other VR games? I'm just curious. This is the next step for me, and so I'm just trying to see what kind of investment.
You really don't need that much space. Like we had a little coffee table in our living room. We removed it mainly because we wanted to allow Ren to have some more space to walk around.
Sure.
But I mean, you're locked in with a cable, and so you can kind of get turned around depending on what you're doing. But in general, you realize, okay, I'm not facing the TV because I'm getting a little bit tangled in my cord. But you always find your way back, because if you're totally facing the wrong direction, you're kind of got to get an alert because it's not getting the sensors. You're really not. I haven't had any issues with like coming close to hitting anything because you're not walking. Beat Saber, you might be swinging your arms a little bit, but in general, I'm sitting down for a lot of the gaming that I'm doing. So
so not a lot of space, and you don't need a spotter.
No, basically not. Belay, you just gotta say belay on, and then you get the on
There
belay.
you go. Perfect.
And then you're good. It's weird. The PlayStation always says that. So, but no, it's me and Logan. We're the VR bros. We love it. I got one probably Thanksgiving time, and it's been. I don't get to play it as much as I'd like to, just with family.
Sure.
And so, it's got to be the ideal situation of Ren's asleep, Hannah's either asleep or busy. So I only play it maybe once a week, maybe a couple times at most a week, depending on life. But this will be my first summer with one, so we'll see how that changes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been playing Borderlands VR. Good time. I got it for like $20 on eBay, digital code. So
nice.
Don't pay full price for it. You can find it on a deal because a bunch of people got it bundled and they don't want it. So you can get it on a nice discount because they're just trying to flip it.
Clever.
So
King of
Borderlands
thrift,
2
man.
VR, enjoying that. I do what I can. But the other game I've been going pretty hard on is some Resident Evil 2
Oh yeah,
remake.
give it to me, man. What you think?
Dude, this game, it looks great. I don't know how it would be so scary in the old crappy graphics, because the graphics and the scenery that's what makes it scary now. You've got the rain, you can barely see because of the flashlight. The atmosphere, everything is so much more realistic. I just don't know how the lesser graphics would have had that effect on a gamer. Like that really sets that environment in this game. But when you get to the certain part of the game where it's basically nonstop intense, I feel like for the rest of the game, dude. And Logan, do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I know where you're at. I know where you're at now.
You're basically on the run for the whole. I mean, I haven't figured out when that ends, but I'm just kind of constantly on the run, and it makes me so nervous.
Yep.
Like my heart is constantly beating. I'm like, I don't know if this thing is around me or if I've got time to maneuver, or you don't hear this person for a while, and then you walk through a door and all of a sudden he's there and you're just like, what the?
Yep.
And you have to run. It's so intense. It's crazy.
Yep.
But it's good. I mean, I'd heard a lot about the game with like ammo tension, like when to use your ammo, when not to, when to run.
Mm-hmm.
It's real. You got to really be selective.
Yeah, man.
But it's good. I haven't finished it yet. I've probably got 2 hours, I would guess, or so left.
Okay.
But
now, who did you start
good.
with?
Claire.
Oh, okay. Yep. Same here. That's who I started with. Man.
So we'll see. I think I'm holding off on Days Gone.
Mm-hmm.
So that might give me some time to play with Leon, but again, just knowing how I am, I'll probably just do one playthrough. I know there's some differences to them, but I'm not usually a guy that does multiple playthroughs of a game, even if there's some difference to them.
Yeah. You like to move on to the next one.
Man, there's too much to play.
Yep.
I commend Tony for sticking with the multiplayer.
I tell you though, I really like Spider-Man is still like just calling my name.
But have you not played it yet?
I played it. I'm like halfway through it, but I can't not play when I have a friend that texts me and says, "Hey, let's get on," or I've got a student that's like online. I'm like, I just can't have that moment of I'm just gonna go solo.
I say forget my students. I'm with them all the time.
Yeah. See, I've got. I mean, Tony, you remember Michael? And then whenever they text me to play Division, I'm just like, no, I'm gonna play this single player game. Sorry, guys.
He says no because he's already put in 45 hours in the Division and maxed out everything.
Okay, it's closer to 30 actually, and Adam got me.
Hey,
there it is.
But yeah, cool stuff. So
funny.
Is that all for you?
That's good for me.
Cool. I don't want to step over you. As far as what I've been playing, then, like I said, the past few weeks have just been busy. Like some of my kids have been like, hey man, what have you been playing recently? And I'm like, being an adult. That's what I've been playing. Like I don't, but in the little bits of time that I did get to play, I did manage to chip away at the last few trophies of Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So I now have, my bad, I clicked that the wrong time. Itchy finger here with these buttons. Did get the platinum trophy for Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Knocked out some of the DLC tombs. Cool stuff. Still don't really care for the story of that game, but the gameplay is just still so ridiculously good that I'm like, I'm just gonna keep playing it. Also been working on Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition on the Switch. It's a JRPG that came out on the 360. I've got about 10 hours in so far now, and it's good. It's still good. I don't really have anything bad to say about it. It's fun. It's a good time. If you're looking for good old JRPG goodness, Tales of Vesperia is your game to go. And yeah, that's it. That's all I've really said. So let's go on to what have you been reading, Tony? Again, man, you get to go first because you were the guest of honor. What have you been getting into?
Yeah. So for me, I've been doing a several week study with my students over Romans, which so much, and I didn't even get through half of Romans in the amount of time that I had in my schedule to do it. But man, I've just been living and digging on this idea of faith, not works, because I am a work-driven dude. And when I get down or overwhelmed because I can't get the things done that I need to get done, God just put this in front of me and was like, listen, there's no amount of work you're going to be able to do that is going to correct this relationship to make your relationship with me right. And it's just fantastic. A reminder. And so I've been really digging in and more so than usual. I mean, I normally am obviously studying, through the whole book and commentaries and word studies and things like that for my students. But I've just been digging even more so into it just because God has just really been putting that in front of me. His faith is far more greater than the works that could ever be done. And so, yeah, Romans has been in front of me for the last 4 weeks easily, if not longer.
Right on, man. That's cool. Like I said, that's one of my favorite books. It's real good. It used to be my old PSN name, Sixth Roman, but now that we can change them, it's the Theologian.
That's right.
Or the Theologian, however you want to pronounce it. But anyway, Adam, man, what is it? What book have you put your nose into?
Well, I've been reading a couple different things. I'm still in that Martin Lloyd-Jones book. on Christian living. I actually started a book recently on the power of proximity, talking about choosing to live in proximity to potentially the neglected or the poor or just a lot of different things, in order to love them, to be a part of them, to understand. And God's been kicking my butt. It's a hard read. Um, I read it and I get knots in my stomach because theoretically I'd love to say that I'm ready to do this, but I'm not. And so I'm not so I'm not going to talk about that book, but that's what it's what I've been reading. It's what I've been reading. That's a rabbit trail. I've already gone too far, but it's been challenging, no doubt. But as a part of my job, my boss, she picks a couple books for us to read each semester. And so she's a huge Elizabeth Elliot fan. And so she picked an Elizabeth Elliot book for to finish the year. It's an easier read for us, but The Path of Loneliness. And you think, as a bunch of RDs who are doing student ministry, why is this book a book that she chose? But it's an excellent book looking at how God deals with, or how God works through loss and loneliness and submitting to his will. I mean, and if you know anything about Elizabeth Elliot, I mean, she's gone through the ringer in many ways, but yet has come out the other side a faithful child of God and has persevered. I mean, losing one husband to death on the mission field, and then another one to, I think it was cancer. And so looking at just kind of looking like everything, life is a gift, and how suffering can be a gift and loneliness is a gift. And these things, like, of a good God, we can either choose to be bitter or we can choose to trust God in these moments. And just something we talked about literally this morning. And there's a lot of good, quotable stuff, but I talked about this some on the podcast before about God wanting to give his best. And that's not always the best that we think or the most understandable. And she kind of phrases it in a similar way of, God is always going to give us what we need. Now, it may not be what we think we need, and it may be a really hard thing, but she talked about in her stories, like, if God thinks that the thing that I need the most to learn more about him and to grow in my relationship with him, if that's loneliness, then I need to get to a point of accepting that, because the only really other solution is to reject it and to reject God and become bitter. And so kind of looking at those implications for just my life, and over I know the listeners and the patrons are familiar with a lot of Hannah and I's story, but like trusting that, what we needed were some really hard things, and I don't understand it in my limited knowledge, but God knows all things and knows what's best for us. And it was even a gift, not just what we need, but him giving those things to us as a gift, and one that I need to learn to receive and try to learn to love him more and know him more through that. But yeah, it's a good book. It's an easy read, so if you're looking for something encouraging, it's challenging. So when I say easy, it's a lot of storytelling. The material to wrestle with isn't necessarily easy, but the storytelling aspect is a relatively easy read. So might be worth checking out, The Path of Loneliness.
Right on, man. It's funny that you bring that up, because that's something that I was kind of wrestling with the other day. Because being in ministry, it's one of those things where you kind of go through these seasons of loneliness, because for some weird reason people have a hard time approaching you as a pastor, because they don't really know like how to talk around you, because they're afraid if they make a certain kind of joke, it'll be like offensive or something. And then me just being in the town that I'm in, I'm like, I don't really relate to anybody, because everyone else is like a farmer or like some other occupation that I have no idea what it entails unless I play a video game about it, and then I have some idea. But yeah, man, it's true, man. There's times where in those seasons you just gotta lean on God and not really reject it. And that's hard to do. It's hard to do. It's hard to do. As far as what I've been reading, I went to a youth pastor conference a couple weeks ago, and got to sit in on Greg Steer's breakout session. He's the leader, or he's the guy that started Dare to Share, which I've followed pretty intently since college, and I look up to Greg Steer quite a bit. And he gave us all this book of his called Gospelize. It was just talking about different ways to mobilize your students for the gospel and get them out there and share the gospel with just anybody, really. And he said something in there about in the breakout session about, if you're wondering why your students aren't sharing the gospel, look in the mirror. And I'm just like, it hit me in the like gut.
Good.
Because I was looking at it, or I was sitting there listening to him and thinking about it, and I'm like, it's right, man. Because if you think about it, a lot of the times, if people in your church aren't doing something, you got to look. I mean, speaking from a pastor's perspective, if your people in your church aren't doing something, you got to look at, are you doing it yourself? Because a lot of times people are going to be looking at you and seeing how you lead your life and what you do, and then following suit of that. And I'm just like, I don't like, I mean, we get on here on the podcast and we share the gospel and stuff, but it's kind of like we're preaching to the choir almost. And I don't really get out and share the gospel with people, just random people, now and again. And man, it just hit me hard, because I was sitting there just thinking and just feeling real convicted about it. Because I don't share the gospel with random people. I don't get out of my church bubble and go do that. And it's funny, I tweeted this out, but like I woke up real early one night in the hotel, and I couldn't get back to sleep for an hour, and I just kept thinking about the gospel, and just felt like God was telling me, like, go out to the lobby, go talk to whoever's working out there, and just share the gospel. And I'm like, can I do this tomorrow? But no, I was like, you know what? If I'm not going to do this now, I'm never going to do it. So I got up and walked out there, and it was real awkward, and it was, one of those things where it's like, I get that this is weird, this is random, but it was fine, and I came back and told my students, like, lean into the awkward, just stop worrying so much. And now I'm like looking forward to all these different situations of where I could share the gospel, and I'm wanting to go do it. And it's like, hopefully my students catch that and run with it, because that'd be awesome. That would be awesome. But yeah, Greg Steer's a cool dude. He's got a podcast out as well. That'll be one of my recos later on, so you guys can go check that out. But that is it for what have we been reading. Now, we're going to get into the topic of the show here. This episode's titled Family and Gaming. And in case you dear listeners don't know, Tony, yes, is a close friend of ours, but he also is the author of the Family Technology Plan. And he goes around and speaks to different churches, different conventions, even talking about technology and how you can make a plan for your family to where it's God honoring and still maintains atmosphere of cultivating that family time and a few other things. But we're also going to talk about gaming as well, because we're the Reformed gamers. That's what we do. But Tony, man, let's start with this. How did you get the idea for your book?
Yeah, so let me first clarify. The book is in works. It is not currently out.
Oh, I thought it was. My bad.
No, you're good.
Tony wrote a book. How do I not know this?
No, Tony is working on a book. He's got a few publishers that are interested in it. That Tony's got to find the time to finish writing a few more chapters before I can get the proposal out. But
my bad.
Hey,
there it is. No, but the Family Technology Plan is, I am the author and the creator of that, and it's a tool that families can use in their homes to help set expectations and boundaries around things with screens, including video games. And so it really came about through obviously passions that both of you guys know about, because we spent some of our time together. Prior to moving to Texas, I was actually a radio DJ who reviewed video games and technology. I was a GameStop manager where I also got to hang out with Logan for a while. And then while I was in seminary, worked at Apple with these guys, was an expert in the Apple store, and so got to learn about technology. And so God had really had technology and things with screens in front of me and as a passion in my life all throughout. But ministry and family was also a huge passion, because I was working in churches and going to seminary to do this full time. And so when I came to Houston, my pastor, who gets, of course, lots of requests to teach Bible studies or devotions at different things, saw an opportunity to pass on one of those opportunities to one of his new staff members in the student ministry. And so about 8 months into me being at my position at Houston's First, I went and spoke at a father-son Bible study. It was on a Friday morning before school, and I talked about honoring God in all things, including your status updates. That just goes ahead and tells you exactly how long ago that was. It was about six years ago now, but in that Bible study, I got to share just some of the things that are going on online. I talked a little bit about pornography, gaming, social media, things like that. And I had a father in the parking lot as I was getting ready to leave, just say, "Hey, my family's been trying to figure out how to manage this stuff in our home. Can you help us?" And I was like, "Sure. I don't know what that's going to look like, but sure." And so I actually went into a home of complete strangers and began walking them through creating some boundaries and expectations around screens and technology in their home. And with that family, I created the very first family technology plan. From that, I then retrofitted it to a little bit broader that I could teach into a large group. And so I've done that at conferences and churches, like you said. But of course, this family couldn't keep this secret to themselves. And so they began telling their friends about the guy who can come and help them manage screens in their home. And 6 years later, I've worked with over 20 families in the city of Houston and the greater Houston area on managing screens with kids as young as first grade to seniors in high school. And cool. So it's been truly a God thing, and he's definitely been all over it. And I've been blessed to have that a part of my life for sure.
So right on, man. So what are some of the what's some of the things about the family technology plan? Like, what are some of the ins and outs of it?
Sure. I mean, for one, the real issue that parents have, and the reason why they seek so much guidance on this issue, are really two issues. One is they don't talk to their kids about this stuff. They may, say, "Hey, I don't want you on your phone right now," or "You give me your phone." But they've never actually talked and shared expectations with their son or daughter, mostly because they don't feel equipped to do so. They don't feel educated enough to do so because of the second reason is that they have zero parenting foundation when it comes to technology. Just like my parents and your parents and Adam, your parents, they didn't grow up with technology and see from their parents how to parent with technology. And because of that, the default parenting that we all have as moms and dads, which is the way we were parented, no matter how many books you read, you'll always have that default kind of in the background. There's no default for that. And so we have a generation of parents who are having to figure this out for the very first time. And because technology is one of those things that's moving so fast, it's very easy for them to fall behind and then just not do anything. And so a lot of times in the process of anytime I do a family meeting or family coaching or group training, a lot of it is education, is walking moms and dads through just why this is important for their family. And a lot of times moms and dads really just want to say, "Oh, well, it's because of pornography or these weirdos that are trying to stalk my son or daughter." And ultimately, it's a few other things as well. The first thing being that there's a disconnect in face-to-face relationships when too much screen time is in play. And this idea of losing the amount of relationships that you have with people in real life, which disconnects you emotionally to them, which makes you not necessarily want to be with them anymore and go back to the screens where you do get emotional and physiological and chemical acceptance. And so spending so much time on those screens, you end up having a disconnect with the people in your real life, in your actual reality. And then the other reason being absolute screen addiction. And I use the word addiction because I actually have counselors and doctors that call me in the Houston area to counsel and help people who are dealing with addiction to screens and technology and social media. And it's ultimately what ends up happening is, yes, the inappropriate content is there, but it's usually the last step, really. It's usually there's been some addiction and there has been a disconnect in face-to-face relationships first. And so really educating parents on these are 3 things that they need to be aware of. And then once they understand those things, giving them some things that they can implement in their home, some of the actual things of a family technology plan, like screen-free zones and daily log-off times and amount of free time that their son or daughter should have. And all these things are up for discussion, which is another thing that's very different than most parenting. This is the one area that moms and dads have to really get their kids' input in on because they're so far behind. And so moms and dads spending some time talking to their kids, going, all right, what do you think is fair when it comes to the amount of free time? This is what I think. This is what your dad thinks. This is what your sister thinks. What do you think, right? And having a discussion and compromise around some of these things. And when they do that, they find that buy-in happens and kids actually begin understanding why this is actually important, not only for their relationship with the Lord, but even just to be healthy.
Yeah.
That's good.
Man, that's good, dude. So, and this is something that I've encountered in youth ministry, and I'm sure you probably have too. You have the parents that, they know they need to monitor this stuff, but at the same time, they're like, I don't really want to get involved in it. It's too confusing. How do you kind of break those barriers down and help them to see kind of the importance of, I don't mean to sound mean when I say this, but like being more involved in this area of their kids' lives?
Totally. Yes, absolutely. I mean, anytime I go to a group training, or even when I go into someone's home, I end up basically saying, you have to actively parent this this area of your kid's life. This cannot be just a passive area that you just hope for the best and we'll see how it turns out. Like that can't happen. And so what I really try to do and encourage moms and dads to look at, parents to look at is, all right, there's a lot of ways you can do this. All right, figure out which way is going to, one, work for you in so much that you can actually control it. Because it would be silly for me to tell you have to get this service or this software and you have no idea how to understand it.
Yeah, that's good.
Find one that you can actually use, as well as one that does the things that you need based on the age of your kid, right? Because if you've got a 3rd grader, chances are you don't need to be able to check who they're texting, but you want to know how much time they're playing Roblox or Minecraft or Fortnite. And so you want to have time limits. You still want to have, an internet, web browser kind of security system, things like that. But so there are lots of different features and lots of things that exist. Sometimes moms and dads just like hit the panic button and they like buy everything, or they buy the thing that's, the most popular, but it may not actually, 1, do what they want it to do, or 2, they actually don't even know how to use it themselves. And so they need to really make sure they see those 2 things and then go from there. Don't make it harder on yourself. Definitely make it easier.
Yeah. So when it comes to video games in particular, because I'm sure I'm going to put this out on my church's Facebook page and we're going to share it like we normally do. This is probably the question that they want to know the answer to the most. How do you get your kids to stop playing Fortnite?
Well, I would say you don't need to get your kid to stop playing Fortnite. The real question is probably, how do I get my kid to not play Fortnite so long? And so it's not the issue of, hey, my kid's playing a game I didn't want him to, because if he's playing a game that you didn't want him to, then that's on you as a parent. Like, you just need to take the controllers and say, hey, you're not playing this game anymore, or uninstall it. So if it's the amount of time they're playing, that's, again, a conversation, is to say, we know that you can log on to the PlayStation or the Xbox and see how many hours have been played in a game. And so finding out kind of what is an acceptable amount of time per day, whether it's day of the week, whether it's a weekend, a school night, age of kid, all that comes into play. But understanding that this is something that we don't want you to be a zombie for the only 2 hours that you're not doing homework or asleep while you're home, right? So like the average screen time for an 8 to 12-year-old is 6 hours a day. A 13 to 18-year-old is 9 hours a day in front of a screen. that also includes video games.
That's wild.
And so if you're like, listen, if you're at school most of the day and you're also sleeping, most of the time you're probably in front of a screen when you're not at those two things. So let's figure out what that's going to look like so that when you are here and you are present, you are with this family and you're a part of this family. And so it all starts with a conversation. Moms and dads are not going to be successful if they come in, huffing and puffing and trying to blow that fort down. It's not going to happen. They're just going to be met with resistance. They may feel better at the end, but their kid is not going to respect them for that parenting choice. And so a conversation needs to happen first, and then go from there. The other thing is moms and dads, sit down and watch your kid play Fortnite. If that's something they're interested in, I mean, if the statistics are correct, I mean, in 50% of Twitch, like the top video game streaming service, is all Fortnite, apparently people will watch it. And so, like, moms and dads, sit down and watch your kids and invest. I mean, it's 2019. We have to, as parents, start realizing that video games is as much as a sport as baseball or football, or as popular of a hobby as band or theater. It's just because it doesn't have the same cultural, kind of impact that our society would say has value. Money, industry, brands, and just the amount of people who are playing it are saying that this is a viable hobby. And moms and dads need to see it as not just a brain waster, but as something that they can use to connect with their son or daughter better.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think with that point, it's like, I don't even know if value, but it's that our culture, especially within Christian culture, that acceptance of there's like that taboo. Oh, you play video games. Like, it's like, why?
Absolutely.
Okay. And we've talked about it at length on this podcast, so I don't need to beat it down, but like getting it, and I think it's getting there. I think the more you see it on ESPN, and you see it on ESPN, which is crazy, the more you see it in the news, it kind of is showing like, oh, it's a becoming more of an acceptable hobby, but at times you find even more of a pushback still within Christian cultures, because again, you're not sharing the gospel, so you must be wasting time playing video games, which okay, we can get into the theology of rest and recreation, but Tony, how important, I mean, usually I think this conversation is being approached a lot in regards to the students. How has that looked for like parent buy-in? Because again, wanting to practice what you preach, but also knowing that it's not just students who are addicted in some ways to their screens. And like, I think of like, since Apple has added the old screen time, it's almost like a competition every Sunday morning when we get our reports of who was on their screen less between Hannah and I. And so the importance of that parental buy-in, because I mean, we've got a lot of parents that listen to the podcast. What kind of advice and things have you seen with the parental buy-in?
Totally. Yeah. And what's great is most of the time I'm speaking to parents. There are some times that I've presented to students, and I love doing that. But when I'm speaking to parents, they're always there like, my kid, or these kids. And what ends up happening is when we get to the idea of screen addiction is I flip it on them. And I tell them, I say, listen, I go, this isn't just for kids. We're talking about a family technology plan, not a student or a kid technology plan. And so I throw at them some statistics about parents and adults essentially, and their dependence, if you will, on technology. And then I pull out an addiction test, and the parents in the room sit down and go through an addiction test with me, where they're honest at the very end. And what ends up happening is they end up realizing that they are as addicted, if not more addicted, to their device when they actually are kind of step themselves back and really look and see when and how much they're using their devices. It's absolutely crazy. No, I mean, you just need to go to a mall and a play place,
right?
And you see how many times a parent is not looking at their kid or what's going on with their kid, but is on their phone. And so there's a moment definitely where moms and dads have to realize if they're going to be successful in their home, because their kids know that their moms and dads have an issue with Facebook or texting and driving or Candy Crush or whatever, they know it. Because when I sit down in homes, kids are calling out their parents in front of me saying, listen, this is you too.
It's like the old adage, elbow the person next to you in church and say, hey, this is for you. And its kids are just like nailing their parents.
It's exactly right. But that's what needs to happen. It's because moms and dads think this is really only their problem. And because they're the adult, they're allowed to do that. But what ends up happening is they end up neglecting their kids and not connecting with them. And some would say that maybe these kids actually are on their devices because they've learned that from their parents too.
Oh, wow.
And so as moms and dads, we need to be aware of just when and how often we are in front of our screens. And I teach this stuff a lot, and this is still something that I struggle with my kids. I'm working all day and things like that, and I get home, I sit on the couch. Yes, I want to just pull up Facebook or Instagram and check this or that, but my kids are home, and I've got 2.5 hours with them before they go to bed. And so there are times when I just got to go, look, I'm just going to put this in another room because I just can't have this in front of me right now because this is my time with them. I'll have a conversation with my wife later if I'm going to pull it out in front of her, but this is my time right now. And it's something that we have to, as moms and dads, have to commit to and really go on from there.
We laugh in our house just with Ren because it's like, if the thing that she wants most is our phone. And I don't think that that's without, that's not a mistake. And she is seeing that we want it and that we put it in our face. And she thinks that she's the queen bee when she gets Hannah or my phone, our phones. And I'm like, it's been a kind of a scary realization. It's like, man, there's a YouTube video, you can search it. It's like, kids toy versus random household object, and the child always takes the random household object. Well, I think why? Well, the parents are never playing with the kid toy. It's not a coveted item. The kids want what the parents want, and so it's been a real smack in the face a lot of times for us of like, man, what are we doing? Now we're still looking for an app that we can, I want to give Ren my phone where she can watch YouTube and not shut it off or call Siri nonstop. So if you got any good recommendations on a app that will lock my screen so she can't screw it up, send it my way. But I think it's
I'll do that.
It's a crazy thing from that perspective of living it out. And I think I like what you said about parents usually, because they're adult, because they're parents. I mean, to some degrees, and it's different for every school. During the school year, a lot of students are even moderated to some degree of how much they can use it. As adults in the workplace, half the time we're policing ourselves or not, and we have some freedom now. Some jobs don't allow people to be on their phones because of just what the job is. But if you've got desk jobs and stuff like that, it's even increased more. So I think a lot of what you said is extremely true of parents. And I mean, I think of myself, it's sometimes a good, humble reminder every Sunday of like, wow, Adam, like sometimes I can tell you why, depending on the week of what I was doing. If I was maybe away from other books and I was reading on, okay, that's more screen time. But a lot of times it's not because of good reasons. So,
yeah.
So, man, since we're in a culture that, I mean, it's like you guys said, when you go out to places, you see kids on their phones and maybe their parents aren't connected with them, or maybe they're both on their phones. How do you shift that? Like, how do you get people to kind of come out of that kind of lifestyle or culture that has just become so common to us that we don't even see it? How do you get people to work out of that?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, sadly, it usually comes out of a point of crisis. Something happens or some behavior changes to the point where these parents are desperate, or they've had somebody close to them go through something that I just described, a crisis of some sort, and they are like, all right, we got to get ahead of this. Unfortunately, majority of the kind of average age of parent and their kid is probably 7th or 8th grade, which is probably 3 to 4 grades too late. I mean, I try to talk to as many elementary school age parents as I can, just so that they can get ahead of it, so that they can have some things in place, so that when kids are older, are trying to form their own identity a little bit separate from mom and dad, these things and these boundaries and these expectations have already been in place to the point where they're not refuting or butting them to not have them in their home. And so really working with moms and dads to see that and kind of get ahead of it in a lot of ways, for sure.
Gotcha. So the earlier the better, definitely. That's good, man. So when it comes to video games, even, do you speak to just kind of like the ESRB ratings and the importance of looking into that stuff? Because I remember, and I'm sure you probably do too, whenever we worked at GameStop, you'd have parents coming in and buying M-rated games for their kids all the time without ever really looking at why a game is rated M or even knowing what that M even means. Do you ever find that coming up at all whenever you talk to families?
Yeah, a lot of times parents, and it's kind of like, as Christians, we all have our different convictions, and certain things, we feel a little bit stronger on than others. And so it seems to be with video games for a lot of families, where some parents will, look, we don't mind if there's shooting as long as you're not shooting people. Aliens, fine. People, no. Blood, it may be an issue, or language may be an issue. One of the biggest things that, yes, these are major things. And if we were honest, M ratings 10 years ago were probably teen ratings back then compared to what some of the M ratings hold today.
Yeah.
I mean, good grief, if a game can offer you the option to skip certain levels because of what they're going to ask you to do, like, that's crazy. Like that shouldn't even have to be in the game. Like, let's get rid of that. And so really it falls down to specific families' convictions. And ultimately all of this boils down to something that parents really need to understand, is that every family is different. And yes, this concept of a family technology plan or setting boundaries is a consistent thing that I would say families need to have. But each one that I've done for the over 20 families, just for example, here in the Houston area, they're all different, because some families are super conservative when it comes to screens, and other families are a little bit more loosey-goosey. And they're like, yeah, this is totally fine. Where other families would say, yeah, that's crazy. No, it's this. And so ultimately, as moms and dads, we can really do a terrible disservice to ourselves, and it's parenting guilt, where we see some other parent do something or make a decision, and we either feel good about our decision or we feel bad about our decision. And ultimately that ends up putting some division between us as co-parents, right? Like parents, in general. And so what ends up happening is you start comparing yourselves to other parents and the decisions you're making. Well, they got their kid a phone in 4th grade, so maybe we should start thinking about getting our kid a phone, or that kid this family lets them play this kind of game. Maybe we should. And so ultimately parents have to realize that they are their kid's expert. Like, no other parent is an expert on their kid. It is just them. And yes, you can look at what other people are doing and go, oh, that's interesting. But you can't let those things sway you one way or another. So ultimately, as mom and dad, husband and wife, you need to sit down and go, all right, where's our line? And we got to stick to our line. And if something comes up and is encouraging us to move that line, well, let's sit down and talk about it. But let's not just move it because we saw somebody else move it or somebody else decided to do this. And so when it comes to game ratings, that's another one. For some families, teen ratings, Fortnite, teen, Apex, teen, hey, go ahead, right? But other games, no way, right? And so it really boils down to what your parents are gonna say, and really kind of how they feel about certain things. Everybody's a little different.
Right on, man. Right on. Man, we were kind of getting close to running out of time here, but man, what are some ways that what are some ways that parents listening to this can get in touch with your material, get some resources to maybe jumpstart their planning on in their own families?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So people can connect with me easily through familytechnologyplan.com. I have a website that kind of walks through kind of what I do, how I teach, where I've been, different things like that. Also, there's a contact form there. I'm also a kind of the technology gaming writer for a ministry called ministrytoparents.com. There's a blog that I write for there. Parents can get a hold of me there. But if they're looking for some tangible things, some great books out there. 12 Ways My Phone is Changing You by book. Tony Reinke. So good. Brian Hausman's got a few good ones out there. Jonathan McKee's got another one about social media that he just dropped not too long ago. And then, like I said, I am currently working on a family technology plan book that will actually walk families through creating this plan. And so it'll be hopefully out here soon. As much as I can get written, I will be writing, and publishers will be seeing soon. But those are some quick ways to get a hold of me. Of course, Instagram and Twitter at the Tony Bianco.
Have you read Andy Crouch's book?
Yes, the TechWise family. Yes. For me, it's a lot of philosophy, not a lot of practicality. It addresses the issue, which we all, I think, agree upon. And his approach for a period of time was basically almost Amish, was what him and his family did for a period of time. And for me, that's not very realistic or practical. But there is some really, really great stuff in there. But for me, it is a good read. It's got a lot of research, obviously, from Barna. It's on the cover, and so Barna is a great resource for him to have in that book. And so, but if you're looking for something to walk through your parents to start the conversation, maybe at your church or in neighborhood book club or something, it'd be a great book to have and to talk about. But if you're looking for some practicality, hit me up.
No, and that's I haven't read it, and it's kind of been on my radar, and I'm like,
Oh yeah, no, he does great with it for sure. And don't hear me knocking it by any means, but yeah, for me, it read a lot more like philosophy, and whereas some tangible here, do this, talk about that is a little bit more helpful at this point in the game.
Right on, man. Well, dear listeners, just as a heads up, we're going to put links to all of Tony's stuff, the website and everything in your show notes. If you saw this on Twitter or YouTube or Facebook, it'll have links to that stuff there too, so that way you can get a hold of this stuff and get a hold of these resources for yourself, and you can get started on that with your own family. As always, with our second episode of the month, we do our patron thank you episode here. So we're going to go ahead and thank our patrons here real quick. These are the patrons who support us over on patreon.com/thereforumgamers. If you would like to support us yourself, head on over there and support even as low as $1 a month. It goes a long way in helping us keep doing what we're doing here, such as adding in piano music at the appropriate times. And so I'm going to thank our patrons here right now. So those patrons are, again, thank you guys: Alex Castellanos, Alex Hooper, Austin Goudreau, Caleb Schmidt, Christopher Commander, Code Missing, Cody Dean, Colin Gregory, David Matthews, thank you, sir, you're a brand new supporter, I appreciate that, David Skinner, Derek Smith, Eric Bryant, Gareth Evans, Jake Walker, Jeff Wofford, Jesse Penu, Josh Broccolo, Luke Kelly, Luke Strain, Mark Fromey, Matthew White Chocolate McDougal, Micah Hendrick, Michael Toller, Ryan1701E, the Jet Islander Podcast, Wesley Ray, Xavier Medina, and Zach Buchholz. Guys, thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon. We really, really appreciate that. I'm going to laugh if we're the only people that hear those sound things and it doesn't go into the actual recording. Wouldn't that be hilarious?
If that happens,
I don't think
if it did, though, that might be my favorite thing ever.
It would be amazing. It would be our little secret.
And that would make the pre-show even more hilarious.
It really would, because we were just cutting up and
we were acting like it was the bee's knees. So if it did it for some reason, that would be too good.
That would be awesome. Awesome. Well, dear listeners, before we let you go, some things you should check out. Tony, man, again, you're the guest of honor, so you get to go first. What are some things that our listeners should check out?
Yeah, for me, I mentioned this earlier, but ministrytoparents.com/blog. You can check out some really great parenting resources as well as some gaming things. You guys are always up to date on that. But if you've got parents around you and you're looking for resources, that one's good. I've also been playing a mobile game called Slices. This is like a Zen type game for me. It's a whole lot of fun. You got to just check it out. It's a free download. Go do it. Be about it. And then I don't know if you guys have talked about this or not, but Preachers and Sneakers, the Instagram account.
I've not got there yet, but yeah, man, that's a wild account.
This has been a fun find. It's been a lot of fun, and it's been a lot of fun to parody. I've got students taking pictures of my sneakers and posting them on the Instagram, and so that's been a whole lot of fun. So there you go. That's what I got.
Man, what kind of sneakers are you rocking?
Man, I've still got my Chuck Taylors.
There you go.
I was looking at some high top all white Vans, but my wife was telling me no tonight. So we'll see if she comes around later.
Check your heart, man. Check your heart.
I know it. I'm checking it.
Just messing. Adam, man, what about you, man? What should our dear listeners check out from you?
Tony just prompted me to. I found another Twitter account recently that was pretty funny. I don't remember even how it came on my radar. But if you are into like wrestling, especially 90s wrestling, 2000s wrestling.
Oh, come on. Let's go, Jabroni.
At Wrestling Pastor.
Yes.
It's so
love that account.
Like, it's so funny. Like, again, I don't know why it just came on my radar recently, but I followed it. And there's some really, again, that was like basically the 90s was what I would consider the prime. Early 2000s were all right. But then it started getting kind of raunchy there for a while. Man, it's some good stuff. So that's one that I would say check out. But another thing, so there's a website. If you're into jerseys, I'm a jersey guy. If you know me, you know I love some jerseys. But they're usually too expensive. So recently, well, I guess not too recently, but so the reason I even say this, I recently got a Braves jersey. I'm a big Braves fan. Got me a Ronald Acuna Jr. jersey. The thing is basically authentic, but it coming straight out of China. So dhgate.com. Now,
is this like Wish?
It's probably less legit than Wish, but it's never stirred me wrong. You go on there. It's not one of those janky sites that you got to get translated. It's in English. Now, a couple buyer tips. Find you somebody who's got a lot of orders. You don't want to buy from someone who doesn't have a lot of orders. And check the reviews. Now it's going to take you around 3 to 4 weeks to get your item, but I just got my jersey and this boy is prime. I paid $13 and got me basically an authentic jersey. It's just not upcharged by, name your retailer store. But yeah, it's dope. I've got so many jerseys. It's horrible. I did good my first 4 years of marriage, 3.5 years of marriage. I'm like, I'm not going to do it. And now that I'm working with these students, it's like every year at Christmas, I take a little Christmas money and I'm like, Hannah, just 1 or 2 jerseys. And she's like, she just shakes her head at me.
Comes back with a vengeance. Dude, I'm on this site right now. It looks so much like Amazon. It's all in English, which I'm thankful for, but you could totally tell that this stuff comes from China.
Well, no, I mean, I'm telling you, the jerseys are legit. You're going to get them, and they're going to have every...
it's one of the flash deals today, by the way. I don't know if you checked this out.
Now, again, there's going to be a billion pop-ups and not pop-ups and advertisements, but you almost have to search strategically with the words. Like if you are missing a word or you don't search the right way, you might not find, especially the mobile app.
Yeah.
But if you're on the desktop,
this is the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air stitch
I'm telling you,
jersey.
You can find everything. Jersey. You can they've got all kinds of jerseys. And so I got me some NBA jerseys recently. Hannah's not a huge fan of it, but I love it. I love jerseys. It's like my one freedom of expression.
It's all right. I've been married for 11 years. Your wife's not going to be a fan of everything you do, but she's still going to love you at the end of the day. Totally worth it.
Oh, man. Especially when you're still looking fresh in the jerseys.
Side-eyed.
Don't even get the flat bills. He rocks them still.
I do. I still do it.
Oh, man. That's funny. As far as my recos go, Gospelized podcast that Greg Steer puts out. There'll be a link to it in the show notes. I think he's got like 5 episodes out right now. You guys can go check those out, especially if you're in youth ministry. But if you're wanting a episode dedicated specifically on overcoming fears of evangelism and working through that, episode 83 of Pastors Talk recently goes over that. And I thought it was an amazing episode, so you guys can go check that out. I'm on a gospel sharing kick as of late. So who knows? Maybe you guys will hear more about that in the next episode, or maybe I'll have encountered someone that just totally scared me, and I'll never know. I'm kidding. But for real though, check those out. Good stuff. And words are hard, dude. I can't make it through an episode without fumbling over something. Tony, man, thank you for joining us on this episode, dude, and sharing with us.
Hey, man, it's been a pleasure. It's been so much fun.
Good stuff. Dear listeners, go show them some love on social media. But as far as social media goes for us, if you guys would like to interact with us, you can follow us on Twitter at TRG Podcast. You can follow us on Facebook as well, like the page and do all that. You can join the Facebook group if you want to interact with other dear listeners. You can follow us on YouTube, youtube.com/thereformedgamers. You can follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv/thereformedgamers. I'm going to try and get back to streaming after a 2-week hiatus because life's just been busy. I'm going to try and get back in there, maybe stream some Sekiro, stream some The Messenger, and go from there. As always, head over to the website, thereformedgamers.com, to check out articles, show notes, all that fun stuff. We got a new review coming up here pretty soon. I think this week, actually, on Power Rangers Battle for the Grid and a few other things as well. And, of course, Patreon. Already talked about that. So, again, if you want to go help us out there, you can go do all that fun stuff there. But, dear listeners, this has been The Reformed Gamers. And until next time, GG and amen. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Reformed Gamers. The following people are supporting us on Patreon at the producer level or higher, and we'd like to shout them out right here, right now. Those people are Alex Castellanos, David Matthews, David Skinner, Eric Bryant, Gareth Evans, Luke Strain, the Jet Islander Podcast, and Wesley Ray. Thank you for your support, keeping the controllers charged, and encouraging my addictive habit of getting platinum trophies. GG and amen.